Right, now we will we will hear from two cities now, Dubai and Cape Town. And our moderator will be Sumaila Isaac, CEO of the World Tourism Forum Institute. And our guest will be Rashid Toefy, who is the director of the Western Cape Province Economic Development. And they're going to be discussing how South Africa managed its tourism industry during these previous months at the height of the pandemic.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to welcome Rashid Toefy, the Deputy Director General, Department of Economic Development and Tourism of Western Cape Government, South Africa. The amazing country that South Africa is, with amazing food, culture, land, you just name it, a vibrant community, you have everything there. However, the country has been hit hard with the recent dramatic impact on tourism arrivals. How has South Africa responded to the COVID-19 crisis?
Samira, thank you very much. I think it's been the perfect storm. It's been a major shock. I mean, as an economy, we rely 10% of our national exports is tourism, and we're very reliant on key source markets like the UK, Germany, and the USA. And as you can all see by the second wave, we've been hardest hit by that. And even our growing markets of the Middle East, China, India have been hard hit. And South Africa's responded well. I think we've kept our country as a leading example of how to manage the health crisis, how to manage reputation in the market. And we've basically just kept things tight, and we await the opening of the borders. And what it has allowed us to do is to pivot to areas that we've always needed to do, like a focus on domestic tourism. But I can just admit to you that it's been very hard hit. We're sitting with our high season is now in December, and we are at 23% occupancies, where we would have been at close to 100%. So significant job losses in our sector. But I'd like to speak a little bit about what we're doing to combat that, Samira.
So Rashid, absolutely, and that's what we want to hear. What is the strategy? Is there a strategy? Is there a plan that, the world is watching South Africa, how you guys are doing it?
There's very much a plan, and I think the important thing is we've shown as a country that even though I'm in charge of a sub-region of Cape Town and our provincial government, we've stood together side by side with our national government and got a concerted joint up effort. I think that's the most important. And we've got these three pillars. The first one is to protect and rejuvenate the tourism supply. The second one is to ignite new demand, and then to strengthen the capabilities of our tourism players, both government but also within the industry, to respond to these changing needs. So we've done various things. Like we've implemented a guaranteed loan scheme. We've extended our unemployment insurance benefits to many millions of people in the sector, and we've got various relief measures, particularly to protect and rejuvenate the supply side. And then, of course, domestic tourism. And when I say domestic, it's the importance of African tourists as well, because the COVID has hit African countries a lot less. And thank goodness for our increasing and our attention to intra-Africa travel. This is the time when those efforts start to pay off, and we're really needing to focus on domestic, the power of the domestic traveler. And by that, I also mean regional, our African regional neighbors. But I must say, not since the World Cup in 2010, when we all hosted the FIFA World Cup, have I seen this kind of common purpose, and that's what really has been the secret to our success, is everybody just saying, let's do this like we did it in the World Cup.
Okay. Thank you, Rashid. Can you share some elements of the Cape Town and the Western Cape success story with us?
Yeah, I mean, in the Western Cape particularly, we had a three-pronged approach. We did it in three stages. The first was to contain the pandemic. The second was to adapt to it, and then recover. And at the moment, we're in the recovery phase. But let me just speak to the containment. There was a time we really handled this like, I used to call it a tsunami that was happening, in our country. It was literally, we had daily JOC meetings, joint operations meetings, and that was led by the Department of Health, Disaster Management, all government departments, and including tourism. That's the important thing. We had literally every day a briefing for about 3 months in the crisis. We then started what we called a COVID content center, which was a public website where the public could go in, and we had hundreds of FAQs, because you can never handle everybody's call, but we developed over 100 different FAQs for people in the sector. And then lastly, we started what we called a hotspot strategy. We allocated staff from every government department to various hotspots, and we managed it in that way. The second phase, which was the adaptation, Sumera, was where we worked closely with tour operators, with hotels, to make sure that they could adapt to the changing environment. And we of course are one of the recipients of the WTTC standards for operating businesses effectively in such a crisis. So, and then lastly, we're now in the recovery phase, and we're doing various campaigns to drive up demand. But most importantly is that pivot to domestic tourism, and then reprioritize. And one of the biggest things for me as a government department is reprioritizing our budgets, because everything's different. Your whole budgets look different, and we've reprioritized them to focus on what I call the most vulnerable sectors. And of course, tourism, hospitality, and events are the ones who've been hit by this a veritable tsunami. There's no other word for it. It's wiped it out.
Right. You held a previous role as CEO of the Cape Town International Convention Center. Tell me briefly that I know you have a story to share with us there.
Yes, Sumera, I think you and I met in that center when you came out in one of your previous lives. But yeah, that's one of the world's top international convention centers. We have over 1 million visitors hosting global events, and what we did, it was really quite surreal for me to walk in there. We turned the whole center, as you've seen in Excel London, but we turned this into one of the world's largest field hospitals, over 800 beds. But I think the story is that in a time when the industry was bleeding, we managed to activate all the suppliers, the stand builders and the event organizers. So we took the power of people in the tourism industry who know how to deal with last minute changes. And we built the most incredible, what was called the Hospital of Hope, and really managed to deal with when we were in our biggest surge, we had more than enough beds to deal with people, right down to oxygen at every bed. So very surreal, from previously walking around and it was a mining congress to walking through a hospital. But we are very proud of that, and it shows the resilience of the industry and the adaptiveness. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that story, because I think there have been many such stories all around the world, of adaptation, improvising, and so forth. Rashid, my final question to you is really very briefly. If you can just tell me if you see a silver lining out of all of this, and what do you feel about the role of organizations like World Tourism Forum Institute? How important is that during this period?
Let me start with your second question, the World Tourism Forum. I mean, more than ever, some sort of standardized approach to a global response is what's needed. And Sumera, I've appreciated your whole series of interviews around the world. The interview you had with the leadership in our country really showed the importance of a global perspective, and then spreading that. We have to learn quickly. It's a bit like Darwin's survival of the fittest, and Darwin's thesis is actually more about collaboration than survival of the fittest. And what I think what WTF Institute does is it helps for a very quick global sharing of best practice. The silver lining, if there's any silver lining, in my mind, I've always been passionate about sustainability, and I think COVID-19 was a big wake-up call for us to maybe have a look at our industry. As passionate as we are about it, we've had a chance to look at how the world has had a chance to slow down, to breathe a little bit, and it certainly has accentuated the importance of rural destinations. So for me, in a country like South Africa, we've always wanted to let people know that in addition to the cities and the urban experiences, you can get out into the wide open spaces. And what we're finding with this new digital nomad sort of trend is that people are actually, we may have less tourists, but they're staying longer and they're going out into the rural areas. So for all of us who are proud of our big urban tourist destinations, here's our chance. The one silver lining is that we're getting people to see into the little small villages, which is where the real essence of tourism is. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rashid. It was very interesting to talk to you, and we wish you all the luck. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much to our moderator, Sumaila Isaac, CEO of the World Tourism Forum Institute, and our guest, Rashid Toefy, Director of the Western Cape Province Economic Development.